Have you ever wondered why, despite living in an era of just wild prosperity, so
Mhm.
many of us feel this heavy kind of lingering anxiety
Yeah.
that something fundamental is just broken?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is the defining paradox of our time. We have more data, more wealth, more computing power than any generation in history, and yet there is this pervasive, almost collective sense of dread.
Yeah, dread is exactly the right word. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are embarking on a mission to uncover a unified theory of why civilizations rise and fall, especially right now, in the thick of the age of artificial intelligence.
Right, and it's a massive topic.
It is. And to do this, we're looking at a truly fascinating stack of sources. We've got a series of highly analytical philosophical essays, which were recently translated from Arabic, and they explore this huge concept of human agency, the modern erosion of our causal awareness, and the Quranic concept of khilafah.
Which is such a rich framework to analyze modern problems through.
It really is. Now, before we jump in, just a very quick but super important note for you, our listener. These sources contain specific philosophical, political, and, religious viewpoints. We're not taking any sides here, nor are we endorsing these specific viewpoints.
Right, we're just analyzing the texts.
Exactly. Our job today is simply to act as your guides, impartially unpacking and conveying the incredibly thought-provoking ideas contained in these original texts. So, with that said, okay, let's unpack this. Because usually when we talk about measuring the success of a modern society, we obsess over the numbers.
Oh yeah, metrics.
Right. We look at GDP, we look at inflation, productivity, innovation metrics. We basically treat civilization like it's a corporate balance sheet.
And the sources point out a pretty glaring historical contradiction to that exact balance sheet mentality. Because if a society's success is solely based on its tangible resources, then, well, how do we explain the aftermath of total devastation?
What do you mean?
Think about the rebuilding of Germany or Japan after the Second World War. I mean, their infrastructure was completely leveled. Their financial capital was essentially wiped out. By all traditional metrics, they were totally bankrupt.
Right, just completely starting from zero, or less than zero.
Exactly. Yet within a single generation, they rebuilt and flourished to become global economic powerhouses.
Well, on the flip side of that coin, you have the classic resource curse. I mean, there are nations today sitting on literal oceans of oil or mountains of rare earth minerals, just massive, unbelievable financial potential, and they just stagnate. They freeze.
Yes, the resources don't translate into a thriving society.
So the texts argue that the decisive variable for a civilization's survival isn't actually captured on a spreadsheet at all. It's this invisible asset, and they call this asset human agency.
But they define it in a very specific way, right? It's not just the political concept of personal freedom that we usually think of.
Right, it's deeper than that. It is the collective belief that human action actually has meaning, that it produces predictable consequences, and that our actions actually shape the future.
The foundational premise here is that every single human being is continuously, sort of subconsciously, asking themselves one core question, which is, do my actions matter?
Do my actions matter? Yeah.
And if the societal answer to that question is yes, people behave in a very specific, forward-looking way. They study for years to acquire difficult skills. They save a portion of their income. They build companies. They invest in their communities.
But wait, I have to push back a little here, because isn't it really just about having the right financial resources to begin with? I mean, if you are completely broke, your actions don't feel like they matter much. It feels like money is the actual engine of agency.
Well, money's fuel, absolutely, but fuel without a mechanism to direct it doesn't really get you anywhere. The texts are analyzing the mechanism itself.
Okay, that makes sense. It sounds like, well, having endless resources is just sitting in a car with a full tank of gas. But if you don't have human agency, you've got a broken steering wheel.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, you have all this explosive energy sitting right there, but you have absolutely no belief that turning the wheel will actually change your direction. So you just sit there in the driveway idling.
That visual captures the psychology perfectly, honestly, because if you turn the wheel and the car doesn't respond, you eventually just stop trying to steer.
You give up.
Exactly. That psychological surrender is the exact moment a civilization begins to dissolve. So agency, in this context, isn't just some fluffy feeling of optimism. It is a highly accurate perception of causality. It is the brain looking at the world and confirming, if I do X, Y will happen.
Which brings us to the mechanics of how that steering wheel actually builds the road. The sources map out what they call the civilizational chain.
Right, the 7-step progression.
Yeah, it's attention, causal awareness, justice, trust, hope, investment, and finally, civilization.
Let's break that down step by step because it's fascinating. Starting with attention. Attention is the individual choice to actively observe reality instead of just, passively consuming stimulation.
Right.
And when you pay attention, you develop the second link, which is causal awareness. You start to see that putting in effort actually produces competence. You notice that acting with integrity produces trust. Basically, you map out the cause and effect of the world around you.
And then comes the third link, which is justice. And this is huge. The sources argue that justice is what preserves that causality at a societal level. It ensures that effort is actually rewarded, that crimes are actually punished, that competence actually leads to responsibility.
Because without justice, the map breaks. And when a society repeatedly witnesses that justice, it generates the fourth link, trust.
And they don't mean trust like a warm, fuzzy feeling.
No, not at all. Trust isn't some warm emotion. It's an emergent property of a highly predictable environment. It significantly lowers the friction and the cost of cooperating with your neighbors.
Now, if you're listening to this on your commute, you might be thinking, okay, this sounds like a very utopian academic theory. But let's look at how this plays out in your actual office.
Good idea. Bring it down to earth.
Yeah, so if you work hard on a project and the boss promotes the lazy coworker who just happens to be their nephew, that is a breakdown of justice, your causal awareness realizes, oh, effort doesn't equal reward here. And immediately, your trust in the company just evaporates.
Which seamlessly leads into the fifth link, hope. And the texts offer this really profound, almost violent rejection of how modern psychology often frames hope.
Yeah, I love this part.
They argue hope is not an emotion. It is an institutional reality. It is the cold, rational expectation that investing your time or your money or your care into the future makes mathematical sense. Institutions either manufacture hope or they manufacture despair.
And because hope makes logical sense, it triggers the sixth link, which is investment. You only invest financial capital or even emotional energy into a relationship if you logically expect a return.
Leading to the final link. When millions of people make those long-term investments simultaneously, the resulting compounding interest of all that human effort is civilization.
That progression, it completely changes how we look at the opposite of hope. Their definition of despair is the grief of tomorrow.
Yeah.
That phrase just hits you right in the chest, doesn't it? The grief of tomorrow.
It really does, because despair isn't just sadness in the present moment. It is mourning the future version of yourself that you expected to become. It's grieving the business you now know you'll never create, or the home you realize you'll never own, the family you feel you can't afford to start.
It's a preemptive mourning.
Exactly. Before a society physically collapses, its citizens silently attend the funeral of their future selves.
Wow. And applying this to generational anxiety is just mind-blowing. Think about Gen Z. There's this constant cultural narrative that they are fragile or overly sensitive.
Right, you hear that everywhere.
But the texts suggest their anxiety is actually a highly rational response to a broken causal equation. For centuries, the equation was stable, study hard, work hard, save your money, and you will build a secure life. Today, that equation is scrambled. Effort doesn't reliably produce security anymore.
It's disconnected.
Yeah. So when a young person asks, does my effort still produce a future? And the world hesitates to answer, their human agency dissolves. It's an accurate assessment of a disrupted causal chain.
And we see that same disrupted chain driving global movement, too. I mean, we typically discuss immigration as pure economics, right? Moving across a border for a better paycheck.
Right, finding a better job.
But the texts reframe immigration as the migration of hope. People leave their homes when they can no longer recognize themselves inside the future their society is offering. The psychological departure happens long before they ever pack a bag.
Yeah.
Crossing a physical border is just formalizing a departure that already happened in their mind.
But what if you can't leave? What if you're stuck in a place where the causal equation is broken, but you don't have the resources to physically cross a border?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is where we see a mental migration. When people physically cannot migrate, they mentally relocate into alternate realities, which actually explains the explosion of conspiracy theories.
Wait, really? Conspiracy theories?
Yes. We tend to dismiss conspiracies as pure irrationality or just ignorance. But the sources argue that psychologically, conspiracy theories are a desperate search for causality.
because humans literally cannot tolerate a random, meaningless universe.
Exactly. When authentic, transparent explanations for why the world is suffering disappear, the human mind will just manufacture them. A conspiracy theory restores order. It says, someone is pulling the strings, someone is responsible.
That makes total sense. People will actively choose a false causal map over complete meaninglessness. They prefer a shadowy cabal over the terrifying idea that no one is at the steering wheel at all.
The brain needs a map, any map.
Wow. We're just desperate to see cause and effect. Which I guess brings us to the elephant in the room, our modern digital environment. Because what happens when the tools we use every single day actively scramble that connection in our brains?
This is a crucial point. The texts make a brilliant distinction here between institutional causality collapse, which is what we just talked about, things like corruption, broken justice systems, or that nepotism in the office, and cognitive causality collapse.
Cognitive causality collapse.
Right. This is the unique threat of the digital age, specifically the attention economy.
Right, because attention is the very first link in the civilizational chain we talked about. But social media is explicitly designed to fragment attention. It replaces deep understanding with constant interruption, and it completely distorts causality.
How so, in your view?
Well, in the real world, reputation used to take decades to build. Mastery came before influence. But on social media, the algorithm rewards virality over verification. Someone completely unknown can become globally influential in 3 hours, for no logical reason other than striking an algorithmic lottery.
And the human brain struggles immensely with this, because when rewards appear entirely disconnected from contribution, causality becomes muddy. Influence precedes mastery. It becomes an environment governed by randomness rather than effort.
It's like wandering through a disjointed dream. You know, in a dream, you walk through a door in your house and suddenly you're on a boat.
Right, and the boat is flying.
Yeah, and then you're talking to a giant rabbit. Nothing connects. Actions have no logical consequences. Contrast that with playing a really great video game. In a video game, the causality is perfectly clear.
Yeah.
If you study the rules, if you practice the timing, you beat the boss. Your effort directly equals success.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. What the sources are warning us about is that we are spending our lives in the dream logic of social media. Instead of observing reality, I catch myself spending an hour at 2 a.m. watching a video of someone power washing a driveway on a loop just because the algorithm served it up.
We've all been there.
Right. We're losing our appetite for the video game logic of reality. Ask yourself, listening to this, are you losing your own causal awareness? Do you feel like your daily actions actually connect to your future?
This raises an important question about artificial intelligence, because AI is the ultimate amplifier of this digital environment.
Yeah, and the texts argue we are asking the wrong question about AI entirely. We are all panicking about, oh, will AI take my job?
But the real civilizational question is, does AI strengthen human agency or does it weaken it? Technology should amplify human responsibility, not replace it. An AI system strengthens civilization if it expands our understanding, if it improves our judgment, if it makes causal relationships more transparent.
Right, and it weakens civilization if it obscures who is actually responsible for a decision. If an algorithm denies you a loan or a job, and no human can explain why that is the death of causality.
Absolutely. It destroys our psychological capital by encouraging dependency. We just throw our hands up and say, well, the machine said so.
So what does this all mean? Reading these texts, I honestly assume the ultimate solution to all of this would be some sort of massive economic reform. But the authors completely sidestep economics and point to justice. Why is that?
It goes back to that third link in the chain. There is a profound quote in the texts. Justice is the repair of despair.
Justice is the repair of despair.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It really frames justice not just as a legal transaction, but as a psychological necessity. When a society actually enacts justice, when the corrupt official is fired, when the stolen wages are returned, it does more than just fix a localized problem.
It sends a message.
A massive echoing message to the entire society. Your actions still matter. The rules still apply. It literally restores the psychological capital of a nation.
It fixes the steering wheel. And the texts take this even deeper, moving from sociology into the philosophical and religious worldview of the authors. They introduce the Quranic concept of khilafah.
Yes, vicegerency.
Right. Let me see if I can put this in everyday terms to explain what they mean. It's kind of like taking care of a friend's house while they're out of town.
Okay, I like this.
You have the keys, you can adjust the thermostat, you have a degree of power in that space, but you are ultimately accountable to the owner's rules. You can't just knock down a wall because you feel like an open floor plan. You are a steward.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. In this framework, human beings are entrusted with the capacity to transform reality, but its agency exercised responsibly within the universal laws designed by God. And the texts use this to distinguish between scientific causality and faith-based causality.
Which is an important distinction.
Very. Scientific causality is simple. You press a button, a light turns on, effort equals reward.
But in the real world, scientific causality isn't perfect. I mean, sometimes you do everything right and you still fail. Sometimes the corrupt person wins anyway. If scientific causality is all you have, those moments will crush your agency. You will fall into despair.
That's where faith-based causality expands that horizon radically. The texts reference the Quranic principle that whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it. It provides the conviction that no sincere good is ultimately lost.
It's essentially the ultimate cosmic backup system for causality. Even if the reward doesn't appear in this lifetime, or, in a way you expect, the universe has logged it. And that belief is what allows people to do things that make absolutely no short-term economic sense.
Like what?
Well, it's why people plant trees knowing they will never live long enough to sit in their shade.
Right.
Because they believe the action itself has eternal meaning.
That's beautiful. And without that expanded horizon of causality, long-term investment becomes just an emotional gamble. With it, it becomes a rational, enduring act of civilization building.
Which brings us to a really fascinating proposal from the sources. Forget GDP. Forget social media engagement. The texts propose a single metric that truly matters for the survival of a society, the effective human agency index.
Imagine that.
Right. Imagine turning on the nightly news, and instead of hearing that the Dow Jones is up 200 points, the anchor reports on the agency index.
Because it asks one defining question: what proportion of individuals in your society genuinely believe and repeatedly observe in their daily lives that their responsible actions meaningfully shape the future?
And if you can track that index going up, innovation, family formation, and economic growth will all follow automatically.
But if that index drops, the society is functionally dead, regardless of how much money sits in the national treasury.
Because rebuilding a civilization's agency isn't something a government can just legislate from the top down. It is inherently decentralized. Whether you are a parent deliberately linking effort to consequence for your child, or a teacher rewarding actual understanding instead of just rote memorization, or a software engineer designing AI systems that keep humans in the loop of responsibility, you are a builder of civilization.
You're restoring the chain.
Exactly. You're either repairing despair or you are adding to the grief of tomorrow.
It's a heavy responsibility, but it's incredibly empowering. Your actions at the micro level are the actual fabric of society.
Yeah.
And, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, sort of projecting the logic we've explored today into a totally new space.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
Well, the sources warned us about how social media fragments our attention and how AI threatens to replace our judgment. But think about what's coming next. What happens when we move fully into immersive virtual realities? Into the metaverse.
Okay. Yeah.
If we raise a generation that spends its formative years in a digital world where all causal relationships are entirely programmed, entirely synthetic, and can be changed in a millisecond by a central authority, what happens to the human brain?
Oh, wow.
If gravity can be turned off with a swipe, if effort is entirely simulated, will humanity completely lose the neurological ability to navigate the natural, stubborn cause and effect of the real world?
Like if the steering wheel isn't just broken, but we've completely forgotten what a physical road even looks like?
Exactly. If we lose the expectation that reality has rules, we lose the very foundation of human agency.
That is a deeply unsettling but absolutely vital question to carry with us. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We invite you to look closely at your own life today and just keep questioning how your own actions, your own agency are shaping tomorrow. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.